Hello, good morning. Good morning to everyone in Chile and good afternoon to the UK audience. My name is Sacha Garafulich. I'm the Market Access Officer at the British Embassy in Santiago. Muy buenos días a todos en Chile y muy buenas tardes a los participantes en el Reino Unido. Mi nombre es Sacha Garafulich de la Unidad de Acceso a Mercados en la Embajada Británica. Before going into today's session, I'd like to inform that we have simultaneous translation in both English and Spanish. So please, if you could go to your Zoom controls where you can select the language of your preference. From computers, you should click on the globe icon at the bottom right of your screen. And from tablets or smartphones, you can press more or the three dots and choose the Spanish or English channel. Antes de comenzar, algunas instrucciones. Solo deseo informar que la sesión cuenta con traducción simultánea inglés y español. Se puede seleccionar el idioma de preferencia desde el panel de las opciones de Zoom. Desde los computadores solo hay que hacer un clic en el globo terráqueo que se encuentra en la parte inferior de la pantalla y desde tablets o teléfonos lo que hay que hacer es apretar la opción más o los tres puntos y elegir el canal de español o inglés. So now I think the translation should be working for all of you, and I will start. And firstly, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar where we hope that the UK and Chilean companies can learn more about the benefits and the new business opportunities of the UK-Chile agreement, of the UK-Chile Association Agreement for the agribusiness sector. Today, we have public authorities and trade experts from the UK and Chile that will discuss on the current bilateral trade relation and the main provisions of the UK-Chile Association Agreement in the agricultural sector. The session will be covering on the Chilean agriculture and agribusiness industry, the main trends in the food and drink sector, sanitary and phytosanitary SPS provisions, customs procedures, as well as regulatory issues. So now I would like to leave you with the Deputy Head of Mission of the British Embassy in Chile, Mr. Nicholas Kennedy. He will be opening our seminar. So, Nicholas, please, if you could provide the welcoming words. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Sasha. And good morning to everyone in Chile and a good afternoon to the audience in the UK. I'm delighted to see you all connected here, and I hope that you all enjoy the event. First, I'd like to thank the Director General for Bilateral Economic Affairs at the Trade Ministry of Chile, Mr. Sebastian Gomez, for participating in this webinar together with other Chilean officials. This webinar will discuss the benefits and opportunities of the UK-Chile Association Agreement for the agribusiness sector. We hope that UK and Chilean companies will be able to learn about the new business opportunities opened in the Chilean agricultural sector after recent approval of a number of export health certificates. Chile is an important and growing partner for the UK, with the potential to increase and diversify our trade and investment bilateral relationship. Following the UK's departure from the European Union, both countries agreed to enhance this relationship through the UK-Chile Association Agreement. The agreement took effect on the 1st of January 2021, when the existing EU agreement ceased to apply to the UK. Now, Chile is the UK's third largest export market in Latin America. Chile's pro-business sentiment, vast network of free trade agreements, and strong drive for innovative solutions make this country a great first stop for British companies that are new to the region. The total trade in goods and services between the UK and Chile was worth £1.5 billion in 2021, which was an increase of 5.4% or £77 million with respect to 2020. Commitments on preferential tariffs under the Association Agreement for both UK and for Chilean products have been transitioned without changes, remaining the same as in the EU agreement. And to build on this, the UK and Chile have an annual trade dialogue that examines ways to boost bilateral trade. This work is led by ministers, and the 2022 dialogue was held just 2 months ago. Within this framework, our countries are also committed to modernisation exercises, reviewing our agreement and identifying where we can work together to make it even more impactful. This work straddles a number of strategic sectors, including financial services, infrastructure, and of course, the agribusiness sector. The UK and Chile have been working hand in hand, supporting and promoting trade and investment in agribusiness, finding new markets and niches for British and Chilean producers and exporters through innovation and through new technologies. And there is powerful data to show why that's so important. Chile's food and drink sector is expected to grow by 35% by 2030. Chile is an attractive destination for UK companies who can offer increased efficiency and technological solutions to make the most of this expected growth. Export health certificates agreed with Chile since 2021 offer great opportunities for UK agriculture and livestock exporters, with a total import market worth approximately £1.4 billion. There's huge potential for UK exporters of ovine genetics, pork, cheese, and pet foods, among other recently opened markets. And of course, there's a lot of support available to those exporters who are interested in exploring the opportunities available here in Chile. Our trade team in the British Embassy stand ready to assist. And in partnership with the British Chamber of Commerce in Chile, this year we've developed an online guide to doing business in Chile. This guide provides detailed information on the opportunities and routes to the Chilean market. Please look out for it. It's found on the British Chamber of Commerce website. And it also includes several sector reports, including specifically on agribusiness. I hope the information to be presented in today's webinar on the UK-Chile Association Agreement proves to be useful for the development of new business opportunities in the agricultural sector between both countries. So I won't keep you any longer. There's lots of interesting information to come. Please enjoy the event. Make the most of the chance to come together and learn from the experience, knowledge, and expertise of our trade experts. And together we can achieve great things as we work towards enhancing Chile and the UK's positions as global leaders and partners in the agribusiness industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for your opening words. So now I would like to leave you with the Director General for Bilateral Economic Affairs of the Trade Ministry of Chile, SUBRE, Mr. Sebastián Gómez, who will also deliver some opening remarks to our webinar. Director General, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sacha, and good morning, everyone in Chile. Good afternoon to everyone in the UK. First, I would like to congratulate the British team at the Embassy in Santiago. Their enthusiasm and performance deserves to be highlighted here. And also in this context, I would like to thank the Embassy for the invitation to this webinar, UK-Chile Association Agreement, New Agricultural Markets and Business Opportunities in Chile. As you know, in June 2016, the United Kingdom held a referendum on its permanence in the European Union with the option of withdrawing from the bloc, winning 51.9% of the votes. This meant that the UK would no longer be a party to the association agreement between Chile and the EU. Hence, it was necessary for Chile and the United Kingdom to establish a new framework for their bilateral trade relations. Accordingly, Chile and the UK created a trade dialogue to establish a new bilateral agreement between both countries based on the association agreement between Chile and the EU. Those negotiations of this agreement began in 2017 and culminated in 2019 after 7 sessions of trade dialogue. The association agreement between Chile and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was signed on January 2019 and has been in force since January 2021, after the UK concluded its transition period and ceased to be part of the trade agreements signed by the European Union. In this sense, one should note that Chile became the first country in the world and pioneer in the region to sign a bilateral trade agreement with the UK, granting legal certainty to Chilean and British companies and investors to continue developing trade normally after Brexit. It is important to highlight that the bilateral continuity agreement contains different evolutionary instruments that lay the foundation for a future expansion of the bilateral regulatory framework, so that it not only includes the current status of the trade relationship, but also enhances in the future. This idea of modernizing the agreement that also Nicholas mentioned before has been present since it was negotiated. Indeed, the current agreement between Chile and the UK almost replicates the association agreement between Chile and the EU, and for reasons of time, ensuring continuity was our priority, reflecting the commercial situation between Chile and the European bloc in 2002. It is clear that trade flows have evolved since then, and the sensitivities in the EU at that time are not the same as the UK as an independent country 20 years after the signing of that agreement. Thus, considering the interests and constraints of both countries, an attempt was made to find a path feasible to follow and mutually satisfactory. The most viable thing then was to open a modernization process focused on updating the regulations of the specific areas in which both parties consider that there are spaces for growth in bilateral exchange rather than a totalizing, modernizing process. In this way, Chile and the United Kingdom conducted exploratory work to identify potential areas to modernize. The exercise consisted of identifying the areas of most significant interest, opportunity, and feasibility of being addressed in the short and medium term between our two countries. By the foregoing, intending to promote trade and investment between our countries within the framework of the first association committee between Chile and the United Kingdom, we both agreed on a common framework for the modernization of the bilateral trade relationship, including a partial modernization of the association agreement. This would be limited to certain areas in joint exploration and progressively incorporating issues such as market access, digital economy, and financial services, among other disciplines over time. Undoubtedly, the relations between Chile and the United Kingdom are long-standing and of the highest importance to our country. Although Chile has integrated into the world, other countries and regions have gained tremendous prominence. So in this scenario, Chilean trade plays a prominent role in the United Kingdom. Last year, trade between Chile and the UK, as also Nicolas mentioned, totaled approximately $1,204 million, consolidating Chile's third largest non-copper export market in Europe and the first for services export in the region. In turn, Chile is a significant recipient of British investments, reaching $16.082 million, the fifth largest investor in our country worldwide and third from Europe. For its part, Chile has assets in the UK for $1,952 million, the third destination of our investments in Europe. Thus, certainly I believe that Chile and the UK share joint efforts to enhance the future of our bilateral trade relationship. Based on this fact, a roadmap for the modernization of the association agreement has been established, and this roadmap includes a tariff modernization and prioritized areas ordered in a work schedule that we are following. The agreed joint plan reconciles the interests of both countries through different levels of maturity, commitments, and rates to address each of them. We hope that this will allow progress with strong and sustained momentum in the modernization of our bilateral trade relationship. So it is a pleasure for me to give this welcoming remark. I think this is going to be a great webinar for the new agricultural opportunities and markets that we will share. And please, thank you very much. The floor is yours, Sasha. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General, for your opening remarks and for explaining the whole status of the bilateral trade relationship. So now we will move to the presentation sections. We will start now with Mr. Carlos Furche. Before that, I would just like to mention that we will have a session of questions and answers after all the presentations have gone through. So please write them in the chat so we will gather them and we can review them, and then we will ask them to the different experts after all have done their presentations. So as mentioned, now we will have our first speaker, Mr. Carlos Furche. He's a former Vice Minister of Trade. He's also former Minister of Agriculture of Chile. He's currently an international consultant, and he will be providing the context and the main features or main characteristics of the Chilean agriculture and the challenges and opportunities this has for British companies. So, Mr. Furche, please go ahead. Carlos, por favor, tu presentación. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Muy buenos días a los que están participando desde Chile. Y buenas tardes, desde luego, a los que están participando.
And good afternoon to everyone that's participating in the UK. So now I'm going to immediately start to share my screen to be able to start showing you. Obviously, here's my presentation. So I hope you can all see it properly. Yes, of course, Carlos. So the first thing I'd like to say that in this conversation that we're going to have, what I'm going to talk about is referred to the context in which we're going to develop the commercial relations and economic relations between Chile and the United Kingdom. And I think what the bilateral director of the bilateral trade office is what he said. He was talking about the importance that for Chile, this bilateral relationship that we now have with the UK, between Chile and the UK, and this is for historical and trade reasons, and also due to the new perspectives, future perspectives that we have today, given the conditions in which we have been developing all this expansion process of the Chilean agriculture. But before going into this very specific area of Chilean agriculture, I would like to remind you that we are now in a scenario which has been changing quite quickly. And before the crisis, we already had a scenario that was marked by a sustained demand for food in the world. It's good to remember that just a few weeks ago, the notion of the fact that in the world there was 8 billion inhabitants, and by the end of this century, that figure would be over 10 billion. So with that first information, we have to think that we need a sustained demand for food in the future. And I think it's important to mention that before the crisis that we are living today, when there's an increase of the hunger in the world, this is in Africa as well, this was a situation that could potentially worsen due to hunger and lack of opportunities around the world. And I think it's useful to keep in mind that this super cycle of the commodities has finished in the middle of the last decade, and especially for agricultural commodities. It doesn't have such a direct impact in Chile, though, but it's important to keep in mind that in the future, it will be probably much more demanding in terms of productivity, competitivity, and it's not possible to trust just in a sustained increase. And also we've got this commercial war between China and the United States, which the last few years of the last decade. And I think there's something really important that is still present and is ever more present in the global scenario, which is what we could qualify as a new technological revolution for the development of agriculture and livestock. And this new technological revolution, which has its fundamental pillars, its genetics for vegetables, for animals, which increases productivity, resilience to climate change. And then we have the multiple applications derived from artificial intelligence, all of these that also make it more possible to increase productivity, competitivity, sustainability as well. And then we also have big data with the multiple applications of this huge accumulation of data, which today we can process much more specifically today in Chile and more focused. So that scenario of this technological revolution will most probably in the next few years extend a lot more and will offer an opportunity, a very interesting opportunity for the development of new businesses, for the expansion of commercial activities and investment between Chile and Great Britain. Now this previous scenario is aggravated, unfortunately, has been aggravated in the last years by three simultaneous crises. One is the crisis from the pandemic, the COVID-19, which was generated a crisis in the world. And then there was increase in unemployment, inflation, and this is a global phenomenon. And this also affected the Great Britain, United States, Chile, and all the countries in this part of the world. And I think it's really important, given the characteristics that trade has between Chile and the UK. I'm just talking about trade of goods, which depends on a great measure on the adequate function of the logistic channels, transport, above all, maritime transport, and also by air, and that was very, very affected by the COVID crisis. And then we have the protectionist tendencies that in moments of crises, these usually appear, and at least from the point of view from a demand, they become a much more important, of course. And that crisis, which still hasn't concluded, and it's been administered, I think, quite reasonably today, and all the characteristics and consequences of the crisis are starting to diminish. And at the start of this year, in February, we had the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which also had very direct impact on the agricultural activity, because everything went up in price, especially in the inputs, in energy, in power, and also we had especially a rise in the price of wheat as well. And because of this crisis that was already anticipated before the pandemic and before the war, was more accelerated and more extended. Yet, I think it's reasonable to think that at some point, the COVID crisis is going to be, we're going to overcome it, this war between Russia and Ukraine, even though for the moment we can't see that it's ever going to end, but it will end at some time, has been the experience with all of the humanity. It's going to finish at some time. Yet what will remain, and this is a fundamental information for the development of agriculture in all of the countries, and I also think of the countries in the Northern Hemisphere, is the impact of climate change. That is going to stay, and all the data is there. And so what we're going to have from here onwards is the worsening of the extreme climate events, and then going to have this relative instability in agriculture from the climate change, and consequently a certain instability in prices. And there's also going to be changes in the geography of agriculture, because climate change is going to have an impact on certain areas, because maybe certain areas will not be able to be used for agriculture. And this could, under certain conditions, some spaces could arise that could benefit due to new temperatures and new changes. And maybe there could be new opportunities in agriculture, who knows? And I'd also like to mention the case of the south of Chile, which will go into more detail later on in my presentation. What are the competitive strengths that Chile has in this scenario? And I think they are basically, and these were also mentioned by the representatives of the government, and Chile has certain characteristics that even in this very complex context will be maintained. So what are the natural advantages? Is this Mediterranean climate that we have, and there's the possibility of generating or creating agricultural and food, goods and services that have a great advantage because of this Mediterranean climate. Then we also have different stations, the complete and opposite stations with the Northern Hemisphere. It doesn't look like it's going to be modified in the near future. And also our location in the Asia-Pacific basin, because that effectively allows our country to be part of the geographical, political, and institutional scenario that is the motor of the trade and economic development in this century. And I'd like to mention that the United Kingdom has expressed interest in participating in the Pacific Alliance. I mean, there's can't go into detail on this, but it's an economic alliance that the countries have in this part of the Southern Pacific. So it's Chile, Peru, Colombia, plus Mexico. And also, so there's interest in participating in different trade agreements that we have, or alliances that we have in Latin America. So we know that this is very attractive for investment in our country. And what are the acquired advantages that we have and that sustain our competitivity and the Chilean agriculture is that we have high sanitary standards that were obtained after working more than 3 decades, sustained for 3 decades. So we're free of nearly all the plagues and diseases on the international trade scenario. Then we have high safety standards as well. We have a very good system for traceability of food. Then we have a wide network of commercial agreements. There's no doubt that this is a really important advantage because of the ease of access to different markets and because we've constituted a network that allow third parties, in this case, companies that can look from the United Kingdom towards Chile as a bridge or as a door to access other markets in Latin America, particularly in South America, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. And soon, and now, I think it's very important to point out the institutional competence and professionalism that we have in the different services. So we have the SAG, which is the Service for Agriculture and Livestock Service. Then we have the Office for Agrarian Studies and Policies, the ODEPA. We also have DIRCON and others, which allow to be able to guide the work in the private sector and investment. So I'd just like to mention also the network of commercial agreements that need to be updated now and shows that we have effectively all the exports from Chile to the world have an advantage, a very important advantage. And it's good to remember that companies that are looking towards the Chilean market and seeing the access that they can have in this market, that this commercial policy that we have means that we have a reduction and nearly elimination of the tariff barriers that we have. The tariffs are less than 6%, but in practice, due to all the commercial agreements that we have, it's less than 1%, and few countries have or can offer this level of openness of its markets. And I should add to this that the better part of these technical barriers have also been lifted or are at least regulated in such a manner that you can actually know what's going to happen with them and they're not arbitrary. So in this slide, what we can see here, in the case of Chile, is a sustained growth of the exports. And I can't see it, it's not here, but there's been an increase of the exports, agricultural exports, and the commercial balance of the forestry, livestock, and agricultural is very favorable. In the case of Chile, and especially the global trade balance for the countries is sustained on this condition that the agriculture and the livestock is in superavid. And this is a condition that is very important, with all probability will be maintained in time.
So what has been the base that has sustained this dynamic development of the Chilean agriculture? I think there is, not afraid to be afraid, but it has been mostly the fruit. I will stop a little bit on this because effectively the expansion of fruit in Chile has as a base expansion of the surface that has been planted, but also it has as a base the increase of its productivity. And that increase of productivity has a strong technological base. And this technological base goes back to the genetic and to improvement in how they handle the hydric resources and the soils. It also goes to better commercial management and better management of the fruit, which is in different artificial intelligence applications, particularly the use of more and more of drones and robotization and distribution of this production. So effectively, it is a sector that is not only the motor from the point of view of the quantitative growth, but I think also it is a very important motor from the point of view of what it delivers in general to the Chilean market as a drive in development, and also in here. It's not in the what I'm showing you, but there is a mention that there are participants who are interested in the livestock part of the country. So I would like to say that Chile has also had in the last few years a livestock area, especially having to do with things having to do with the pigs or with the different birds and beef that has been dynamic. And in the case of fruit, as well as the fruit, it requires innovation, technological development, and more productivity, but they are no doubt areas that are dynamic. Here in Chile, we have especially what has to do with the pig and dairy and beef. So beef and sheep are also important, but I think especially having to do with poultry. So, and the poultry is a main thing. So I would just like to mention this, and pork. And so I would like to talk about new products. And now the fruit in Chile. This is pretty different from the fruit that we used to have 10, 15 years ago. And there are also new products that are very dynamic. The most important one of them has been the cherry. That is one of the export products in Chile. But we also need to add the production of nuts, almonds. We have different kinds of, for example, blueberries that you can see in this, that we have sustained growth. But what I would like to call the attention to in a possible area of interest is just as much as how last year we had and different things came up, we also need to promote the growth of new areas as well that are productive. We have different species and varieties. And I think here there is also space, which is very interesting, for companies who would like to also be a part of this process. even though I know that many other panelists are going to get into detail regarding the characteristics of the bilateral exchange between Chile and Great Britain, I would also like to mention that considering the importance of the markets of destination, China is the most important one. And I would like to highlight that the Great Britain is only is further down, as you can see, from Chile to the world. And you can see the next graph also allows us to show, and you can see the importance is pretty reduced. And I would just like to mention the next slide. Unfortunately, it's not as clear. Carlos, I'm sorry, if you could put it in presentation mode because it looks too small there. Oh, 1 second, yes. For some reason, I don't see the bar at the bottom. I'm sorry. Okay, no problem. I'm afraid to have it disappear either way, but believe in me, what those things that has to do with the products, Great Britain, United Kingdom is not on the list. So what do I want to say with this? That there is effectively a space for great growth, practically infinite growth of product probability for the United Kingdom and Great Britain to produce and have competitive export due to the openness of the economy and this area in Chile, and due to the condition that Great Britain is a supplier that is at a level that is very reduced here on this graph. That means that effectively there is a huge space, a tremendous space for them to grow, and they have a lot of, they can be very competitive in this country. And I think something that is already happening, which is the export from Great Britain or the United Kingdom having to do with genetic, especially with animal genetics, is something that could be expanded with no doubt. And it is something that could also be expanded to other areas of the agricultural production within the next few years, which will have high demand in the next few years with technology and genetics. Now, I would like to show you the exports of wine from Chile to the United Kingdom, just to show you that it is the only export in the area from Chile in which the United Kingdom is within one of the most highlighted. As you can see, it has been consistently one of the 5 main destinations, sometimes the 3rd as in the last year, and other times it has been 4th or 5th, but it has consistently been in one of the markets that is one of the most important for Chilean exports of wine, which together with fresh fruit, it is one of the main areas of the Chilean export. So here you can see the exports, the graph of exports of Chile, and you can see that Asia, especially the APEC countries, excluding NAFTA, is the main market, more than 40%. Then you have North America, NAFTA is 30%. European Union, which in this information still includes Great Britain, is only 11%. Having said all of this, what are the main challenges that Chile has in this new scenario? I think the most important one is adapting to the agriculture to the climate change. And this adaptation to the climate change involves a lot of things. But the main instrument for this adaptation to the climate change is technological innovation. Technological innovation in pretty much in all areas, from genetics to the water resources, to the soil protection, sustainable management, to the complete process of production of food. So I think that in this great challenge, which is the adaptation to climate change, is the key of the future for Chilean agriculture. And it is also the key, I believe, for a new view under the parameters and concepts of the commercial relationships between Chile and the United Kingdom. You could say that there is a need of sustainability. And I say this on as well from some information that came out not long ago in the newspapers, that the European Union is already advanced, talking about the establishment of different taxes that do not include food, or at least does not include food as of right now, of products that have carbon footprint that is considered that it affects the environment, and that is a new potential that is expanded to other areas of the economy. And it is a discussion in the European Union, but I think other countries within the United Kingdom, United States, and also Japan are starting to evaluate these measures. Therefore, there is an area as well that we can place attention on. I also mentioned climate change previously, that it has effects in general that make production of food difficult, and agriculture difficult. In Chile, it's very evident. The main visible consequence of climate change is the loss, the decrease of rain, especially in the central part of Chile. However, as a paradox, it also opens up new opportunities of production in the regions of the center and the south. It broadens the borders of what we could call agriculture that is intensive agriculture. Therefore, also there we can see different opportunities for commerce and investment. And also, I would like to mention one last thing that having to do with logistics and value chains. There is no doubt that this is an issue that will have great importance for the development of agriculture. And then I would also like to say, you might say, what is he talking about? But yesterday in Magallanes, in Punta Arenas, in the south of Chile, they carried out a presentation of the first production of green hydrogen applied to a vehicle, to a car. And so this is information that most likely in the next few years is going to change, having to do with the transportation, especially with the maritime transportation, which is a very big part of Chile, and also energy or power. And this is a field as well, and a space in which it is possible as well to imagine great development having to do with the adaptation of machinery used in primary production, as well as the processing as agro-food, transforming them into machines that can work on green energy, as well as the use of agricultural area for the production of energy in green energy conditions. So what are, in this new scenario, what are the main strengths that we have at the same time? An invitation to the development of commerce and investment between Chile and Great Britain. We have a good base of natural resources and competitivity. We have commercial agreement networks. We also have a part of the basin of the Pacific, new options and alternatives that are productive, and there is great diversification, the good technological level, and as well as the need of innovation and incorporating new technology in the production, and also demand that is ensured pretty much for everything that Chile produces, what they import and export. In both cases, we have demand in mid and long term, and there's also a good capability of associating in the private and public areas. And in the seminar, I think it's a good demonstration of that capability of association. And that is what I wanted to comment today. And I hope that this can help put into context the debate that we are going to be having in the next 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Carlos. Thank you very much, Mr. Carlos Furche, for this very interesting and comprehensive presentation on the Chilean agriculture. And we believe that it's been a valuable contribution to the following subjects to be discussed by our trade experts. So now we're going into the chapter or session on market access issues. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Fernando Catalán. He's the head of the Trade Regulatory Affairs Division of the Trade Ministry of Chile, SUBREI. He will be explaining about Chile's trade policy, the trade regulatory affairs, as well as the SPS issues and how they coordinate and interact with the other governmental agencies. So, Fernando, please, if you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sacha. Can you hear me well?
Perfecto.
Okay, I'm going to share my presentation first. Just give me a minute, please. Okay. Okay, can you see it?
Sí, se ve muy
Okay,
bien.
thank you. Okay, as Sacha mentioned, my name is Fernando Catalán. I'm the current head of regulatory division of the Undersecretariat of International Economic Affairs. In first place, I would like to thank the Embassy of United Kingdom to organize this seminar and invite me to share some facts about regulatory matters in Chile. My intention is to give a general view of the organization of regulatory issues with emphasis in SPS matters in Chile in order to give an overview of what is the current environment in Chile to export animal and plant products and also food, which is important to evaluate the potential feasibility to export to Chile. My presentation I divide in 4 parts. In first place, I'm going to give some general view of the SUBREI, the role of SUBREI in international trade policy in Chile. Then the function of the Trade Regulatory Affairs Division, which is very related with SPS, TVT, and good regulatory practices matters. How is organized the SPS matters and control in Chile, and I'm going to give some fact information at the end of my presentation of SPS import requirement in order to give identify some opportunities to export agricultural and livestock product to Chile, and also food. Okay, to give some context, because I'm going to be brief in this part, because I think the previous panelists also mentioned this aspect of Chile. In Chile, the definition and implementation of the international trade policy is in charge of Undersecretariat of International Economic Affairs, SUBREI, and we negotiate the different discipline of the free trade agreements, and in the free trade agreements, we organize in different thematic divisions. We have a division that are in charge of negotiate and implement and organize internally in Chile tariff and rule origins, market access, services, investment, intellectual property, and trade defense. There are 3 disciplines within the free trade agreement that we call regulatory matters, which are the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, technical barriers to trade, and good regulatory practices. Just to give context what deals in what deals these disciplines. All disciplines are basically regulation that affect goods, and that regulation can affect international trade because can create some difficulties to export, increase cost of production, etc. The sanitary and phytosanitary measures are regulations or requirements that which objective is to protect human health from contamination in food, the presence of additives in food, or residues for drug residues or fertilizers in food. Also protect animal health and plant health, and the entry of plagues of plant diseases to a territory. And on the other hand, technical barriers to trade are also regulation to affect food, but by definition exclude all SPS measures. It means that are all other regulations that affect goods that are included in the agreement of SPS. And good regulatory practices in general are a set of principles and recommendations that look for improve the regulatory processes with more transparency, evaluation before implement regulation, and create a more predictable environment for regulatory issues. I have a very similar chart. I think that the panelists presented before, which with some of the last agreement included. Chile has currently 32 trade agreement in force, which include 64 economies and represent 88% of the global GDP. And the 65% of world population, that means more than 5 billion people. That is a huge market to explore opportunities around the world for the Chilean products. And also, this relationship generate also opportunities of business for countries that have this agreement for Chile. Now, given this general context about free trade agreement and international trade policy in Chile, I want to share some main functions that deals our regulatory division related to regulatory issues in Chile and internationally. Our mission is promote transparent and efficient regulatory framework for international trade in Chile, and also we try to promote with our trading partners. We lead two national commissions, the TBT Commission and SPS National Commission, which coordinate problems or activities related with those areas of regulatory issues. We coordinate negotiations, the negotiation of TBT, SPS, and good regulatory practices in the trade agreement of Chile, and also the implementation and follow-up of the commitments of the different committees that created within those agreements. We also are in charge to participate in committees and working groups of multilateral fora related with regulatory matters. For example, we have delegates in SPS and TBT committee at WTO. In APEC, we deal with some committees of cooperation that deals with standards and conformity assessment procedures, ALADI, Pacific Alliance, OECD, and several other committees or instances where we deal with regulatory issues. We are WTO TBT notification national authority. We notify all regulatory changes or new regulations to the WTO TBT committee in order to fulfill our obligation of transparency in the WTO. And we are also national contact point of the for TBT matters, and the other members of WTO can contact with us to make inquiries about our regulation. In Chile, we participate in several national committees and boards. We organized halal board, that is a very important TBT issue to have access to some countries that halal is important for consumers. We participate in the Board of Sanitary Regulation of Food, which discuss the changes of food safety regulation in Chile, that is led by the Ministry of Health. We also participate in the National Committee of Codex Alimentarios in Chile. We organize and coordinate the participation of Chile in one of the Codex Committee, which is General Principles. We are responsible for General Principles Committees of Codex Alimentarios, and other boards like Security Products Board, also which is held in Chile. Okay, specifically talking about sanitary and phytosanitary matters in Chile, the sanitary and phytosanitary matters in Chile that affect international trade participate basically four ministers: the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through our Undersecretariat, SUBREI, that we have the function of negotiate and implement SPS agreement, and we coordinate the national committee where participate the other ministers. We have the Ministry of Health, that through the regional ministerial secretariat in the different regions is in charge of control of food at domestic level and for import, which is intended for domestic consumption in Chile. The Ministry of Agriculture, through SAC, make risk management of animal and plant health for livestock and agriculture, and also make the sanitary export control and certification for primary products of agriculture and livestock. And finally, the Ministry of Economy, through the National Fisheries and Aquaculture Service, which have functions in food safety for export and animal health for fishery and aquaculture products. I'm going to give some more specific information about the functions related to import control in the next slides. Now, how we organize the implementation of the SPS agreement in Chile. We have an SPS interministerial committee, which is led by our division. This committee was created in 2001, the National SPS Committee, through the Decree 238/2001, but in 2021 we modernized this committee, and we create a new decree number 4, which incorporates some new functions. And this commission is essentially related to give some functions and procedures to management of sanitary access Chilean products. In this committee participate all the ministries and services that deal with SPS matters that described in the previous slide. Now, I would like some practical information about the sanitary and phytosanitary control in Chile for import in order to give some tools to identify opportunities and the environment for in Chile to import food and animal and plant products. All the supervision and authorization for manufacturing, packaging, storage, and distribution of and sale of food in Chile for domestic consumption is in charge of the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health also perform the food safety control for import for domestic food for domestic consumption from the food safety point of view. And the relevant regulation basically is the sanitary regulation of food, which is a regulation that has all the food safety standard that must fulfill the food that is consumed in Chile. It's a good guideline to know the requirements of the standard and for food that will be consumed in Chile. Also, the Ministry of Health have available manual for the import of food, where is described the approval procedures and control and inspection of all food that import to Chile. It's a good guideline to understand how the system works, and some important issues related with labeling are also available in the web. Especially labeling requirement related to nutritional facts, which was implemented through decree number 13 in 2015, is also available for consulting. So for import food intended to domestic consumption, the ministry in charge through the regional ministerial secretariat is the organism in charge of this matter. For the organism in charge to establish animal and plant health import requirements and control for agricultural and livestock products is the Livestock and Agriculture Service. In this case, the system is more case by case, because in this for primary products and animal products or animals and plants, the sanitary and phytosanitary risk is higher than processed food. So they perform evaluation case by case according to requirements of our trading partners. But for information, they have in their web page the information of approval, control, inspection procedure, and import requirement of animal products in their website. And there are a list of several issues related with the authorization of establishment, requirement of health certificate for animal and animal products that is available and can be consulted directly in the web page. The phytosanitary, they also have the same tool for phytosanitary requirement for agricultural product import in the web page of SAC, in case you want to consult. I want to leave the presentation, and the links for access are all there in the PPT. And finally, the National Fisheries and Aquaculture Service, and NAPESCA, they have a more limited function in control of product for import. Their main function is to control fishery and aquaculture product for export. They have some responsibilities in import. They control food safety of fishery and aquaculture products import only if in case that those imports are intended to be processing in Chile and re-export. And in that case, they control food safety for fishery products. If fishery product will be consumed in Chile, is intended for domestic consumption, is in charge of food safety control, is in charge of Ministry of Health. Also, they perform animal health for fishery and aquaculture products in case of products for high risk, like free animals, basically, or for import for genetics, etc. More information, they have a manual available in their webpage, which is available the information for not only for SPS, other matters control like the legal fisheries or other administrative requirement for import fishery products to Chile. Okay, with this information, I would like to highlight some facts that where we can identify some opportunities for import food or animal products to Chile. Here we have some chart and graphics of bilateral trade between Chile and the United Kingdom. We see in general a stable amount of commercial exchange between both countries. If we review the main products exported from United Kingdom to Chile, we can see that in general, food and animal products are not the main products exported to Chile. So at least in the numbers, we can think that there are some opportunities to increase this trade exchange between UK and Chile. And in Chile, we can see in the first places basically fruit and wine that is that we are known for export this kind of product. In this, given this context and considering that since is enforced the agreement, association agreement between Chile and UK has been agreed between DEFRA and SAC, more than 20 export health certificates for animal and animal products. There are a list of products that have at least health certificate agreed. They have access in principle, probably in some cases needs to authorize the establishment, but in principle are the terms of and the condition are agreed, and the environment is positive to export this list of products. And this, in addition to the current condition in Chile to import food for consumption intended to domestic consumption, controlled by MinSal. We have the processed food for consumption is under the control of MinSal and requires comply with food safety standard, but is not required a sanitary certificate or a special processing plant register. Is not required for import food to Chile. I want to clarify that it's from the food safety control point of view. In terms of animal health or plant health, this is another story, but we at least have this list of products, animal products authorized to export to Chile from from the animal health point of view. There are good conditions for SPS condition for export to Chile food and animal products that could be explored by producers and importers. From the SPS point of view, probably there are some other element that it is necessary to analyze, like tariffs and other kind of conditions. But from the SPS point of view, there are many opportunities to explore given this fact that I mentioned. With this slide, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fernando, for this comprehensive presentation on Chile's trade policy with its extensive network of free trade agreements. You have also explained very well and in detail all the regulatory and SPS issues, together with all the export health certificates that have currently been agreed between Chile and the UK, and that brings several opportunities for both UK and Chilean companies. And this is also a valuable contribution to the following subject that it will be presented now. Our next speaker is Mr. Horacio Borges. He's the former director of the Chilean Agricultural and Livestock Service, known as SAG in Spanish. And in Chile, he will be explaining the role of this agency in the protection.
Thank you, Horacio. If you can put it in full screen. Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. First of all, I would like to greet all who are connected in this seminary from the United Kingdom in this afternoon and from Chile here this morning. In general, the presentation that I want to give today is related to why Chile, as the minister expressed, what it is a country that has exceptional health, whether it be an animal as well as others. So for this reason, I would like to show you the structure of this agricultural and livestock service and what are the functions. The functions mostly has to do with the health of the vegetables and animals, but also the care of the national resources that the country has. Chile is a country that is free of most diseases that have economic impact, and they correspond to a list that was OIE, and the importance having to do in the health and financial part that has to do with these kind of different things. For example, the foot and mouth disease and the PPC or the PPA, Newcastle, and also this service is concerned and takes care of following through with the different well-being norms of well-being that have been around for more than 15 years and that are mainly 15 years that we have been working permanently. So you have a presidential support for this. We have to maintain the well-being of the animal from the production, from the reproduction of animals until the process of where the slaughterhouse, and also in the process, the final process where we consider, and it is a key for this institution. And from the health of the animal point of view, there is a system that also has more than 15 years, and that allows us to see the origin and the history of each one of these animals, especially in terms of beef in the different pork farms and the poultry farms, where you can count on the history of these animals. And from the point of view from the vegetable health, which is another one of the functions of the service, Chile is a country that has, we have quarantine pests that are absent, which has a big impact in finances. It is free of, for example, the fruit fly from the hoglumbling citrus, and also the avocado sunspot, for example. And also we control the different present plagues, and there is control under the Agricultural and Livestock Service, which you have the Levosia botrana, you have the different potato plagues, etc. And then we have the supervision of different plagues that are relevant, that are present, but that don't cause quarantine. For example, the Drosophila suzuki, or different bacteria of the kiwi, etc. And also the care of our renewable natural resources, that we are concerned with all the norms, and that it allows us to be to have a presence in the world that is each time more and more close to what we are all concerned about, having to do with this area. The organization of this service has a national directorate. It has two subdirectorates, and which has to do with all of the areas that are executed and the actions are executed, and also a national subject directorate that handles all of the financial and staff and others. In the Livestock Protection Division and Agricultural, Forestry, and Seed Protection Division, this is a division that is very important for this service, which is a division that has no border. And in this case, it's a department that is permanently related to the different agreements that we have signed in this ray, and that we need to be always taking care of or watching out for. There's also, we are also under a scheme that is prevention of the coming in or the entry of plagues and other issues. So we are constantly in surveillance. So we have these plagues and diseases. We are surveillance. So if anything comes up, we have to be able to control and or eradicate. Other elements that the service generates, we generate regulations many times with SUREI or other organizations, the Ministry of Agriculture, for example. We also have the permanent issue of something that at one point, this participation between ministries that we can call sanitary diplomacy, health diplomacy. And then another area to be able to cover this is to supervise the compliance with internal regulations. We audit and supervise compliance with important health certification and current agreements with commercial partners. And those that are current with our commercial partners. And what we have been going forward with is with the agreements So we have to be constantly aware, and also to be able to come through with these functions. Yes, the service is in 16 directions in the regions, and it also has 66 sectorial offices, and within them they have all of the operations and of the services, as from the point of view of the, for example, control, surveillance, and also making sure that we fulfill and comply with each of the norms for export, as well as for those things that come into the country. We have 96 border crossings where we control the arrival of any product, whether it be phytosanitary or zoo sanitary. We see their certification. So if they are in compliance with the certification that has been negotiated with those countries, and also whatever is not within the agreements, they are retained to make sure we go through the process, that due process. So those things that have to do with control and certification of products, we have some delegates where we have the control of plants, and we carry out work in meat products and its derivatives. We also have animal and control, all the medication, all the veterinary medicinal products that enter the country. We also control animal feed products for the animal feeding. We also see the entry of pets and exotic animals, and all with more strength. So these entry of these pets and exotic animals, which is a worldwide exchange of, and this increases more and more. And what this means that for many thousands of families, of millions of families around the world with their pets, who are a part effectively now of their family. Everything having to do with genetic control, surveillance, and also control, whether it be agricultural or in other areas, all the agricultural products and its derivatives. We also have to have them reviewed by our services. Everything having to do with seeds, the arrival of seeds or the generation of seeds is also controlled by the Livestock and Agricultural Service. Chile is a country with controlled seeds, and we also are exporters of seeds. All of the phytosanitary products, the fertilizers, they have to be registered, plant protection products, fertilizers, and others. They also have to be controlled, and anything that has to do with propagation material. And here we have a tremendous possibility. We also have those things that are carried out with the services of the agricultural and livestock services for the import of alcohol. So we have the responsibility to fulfill the law of alcohol that arrive in the country, whether for be quality of what is alcohol produced in Chile, and as well, among other things, we also have all of the agreements of organic agriculture that are being signed with the different countries, and they include the importance So how do we access the export of agricultural products to Chile? The first, and I'm pretty much, the agreements with Ray and the different countries and the different groups of countries, it brings in this information, but you have to, from the practical point of view, the request of the country that wants to export to Chile, it has to come in to the Sanitary Service of Chile, whether it be through the embassy, through the REI, through any other authority, but it has to, this application of the official sanitary service has to arrive to the agricultural and livestock services. First, there is an exchange regarding the health status of the product of interest in the country of origin. And normally, whether it be animal or vegetable, you can find it normally with some kind of risk analysis that is carried out by the agricultural and livestock services. And the risk analysis is also gives some elements of how this product could arrive to Chile, with the products, whether they need to be handled with cold or with heat. They need to come with information, etc. And this is agreed in a certificate, a health certificate with the conditions to enter the country. If there is no possibilities for it to come into Chile, clearly this product is rejected. And there you add the health certificate with the conditions to be able to enter Chile. And here, as they said by the representative of the SUB-REI in Chile this last time, has signed a series of certificates with Great Britain, basically for products of animal origin. You have what is horse, beef, sheep, and also, and among others, and also the possibility of sending embryos to Chile for genetic improvement, and it is much faster. We also approved dairy products that, from the point of view of exports, they can have great importance. Pet food for the animals. We have 15 million of export, so there is a clear possibility of having business with a country, since the pets continue growing and they are more and more specific in what is required according to the size of the pet, and a series of elements that allows us to see this kind of food. And talking about meat, pork meat and its subproducts, you have also beef, and you have pork fats and other products as well. We have collagen, so that it can be incorporated in the diets of humans. And we know that in the world there are many people who are requesting collagen to be able to improve their health, and also some to be able to look younger. And in general, The list was already given by others who have spoken previously, and it is open. This market is open, and due to the information I have been given, there are some negotiations that are being carried out, and that this can even improve even more each day in our relationships. And in the particular case of the United Kingdom, since Brexit, we have the agreement to maintain the phytosanitary and zoosanitary conditions previously established by the European Union, but there is permanent conversations between the embassies of Chile and the United Kingdom and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we are advancing in these new agreements between Chile and Great Britain. And I think it would be with the agreements, this agreement, you can see it in the website of the Undersecretary for International Economic Relations. Also, the phytosanitary and zoosanitary requirements for export of Chile can be found on the SAG website, and the different food items need to fulfill or comply with what it says in Chile with the code that we have that is prepared based on a series of agreements that have been carried out. And we also have, and this is very important, especially in issues having to do with the speed of the exchange and the possibility of not being detained at the port. You have the electronic certification for the European Union, and we have already have conversations, at least with the agricultural area, that unfortunately are stopped for now, but we want to push so that this can be carried out and have an electronic certification for the entry of products, whether it be to Chile as well as to other countries where Chile would like to export. And here I have a list of the main products that SAG has to see in 2022. And as you can see, that they are from largest to smallest, and whiskey in Great Britain is very important from Great Britain. And here we have the list, but this list clearly can improve quite a bit with the different agreements of certification that the Livestock and Agricultural Service has carried out. And on the other hand, we have products that clearly are imported, that are exported to the UK. And as I said previously, you have a clear demonstration of the fruit in Chile that is present in many, many countries of the world. And with the added value, at least from our point of view, to be able to reach with fresh food and edibles in a safe way to each one of the countries that we export to. As we said at the beginning, Chile is one of the countries with the best sanitary and phytosanitary conditions in the world, and with a large number of international treaties and agreements, which is part of its trade policy, and at the same time, part of its food security. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. We are available to be able to with all the other speakers as well, to be able to help every time we have a commercial exchange having to do with agriculture or fish or livestock or others, that we can participate. So thank you very much, Sasha. And I hope that somehow we have been able to comply with what you are requiring.
Muchas gracias, Horacio, por tu presentación. So thank you very much, Horacio, for your presentation on the Chilean Agriculture and Livestock Service, SAG. Just worth mentioning that our embassy works on a daily basis with SAG, together with APHA, which is the Animal and Plant Health Agency that you already mentioned, and also with DEFRA, which DEFRA works with our embassy and with SAG. DEFRA is the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, in relation to the SPS, the sanitary and phytosanitary relationship, specifically on the 21 export health certificates that you have already mentioned. So thank you once again. And now I would like to introduce to you Mr. Emilio Araya. He's the former director of customs in Arica, which, by the way, is the northernmost city of Chile. He's a former trade commissioner and agricultural attaché as well overseas. He was posted in India. He's also a trade consultant, and he will be discussing today on all the customs procedures for imports of foreign as well as UK agricultural goods into Chile. So, Emilio, por favor, ahí quedamos con tu presentación.
Well, thank you very much, Sacha. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the British Embassy for this seminar, which is giving us a huge amount of information on the opportunities that the agricultural sector has from and to the United Kingdom. And I'm going to talk to you about the Chilean National Customs Service, one of the fundamental pillars for exterior commerce, especially for Chile, which has been developing more than 20 years, its different functions. And the external trade, foreign trade has been developing considerably, as you've seen in the different graphs, and how we've seen also how many different products have come into a country, and we've had different bilateral agreements, commercial agreements, which has created a flow of trade of imports and exports from Chile. So the National Customs Service is one of the pillars that compose and is always, as Horacio said, and together with other entities that compose these pillars that help us to facilitate trade. So the mission of the customs is to contribute to the growth and competitiveness of the Chilean economy through the control, promotion, and voluntary compliance with customs regulations, and also the facilitation of foreign trade for the protection of the country and its citizens. So this mission also has four fundamental pillars. First of all, it's the development and facilitation of foreign trade. As I said before, foreign trade in Chile has increased noticeably, and so therefore the volumes of imports and exports of merchandise has been improving the flow. So it has to be a quick and efficient flow. And this other role that customs has is also to fiscalize all things that are being admitted in illicitly. So we have to make sure that these aren't being admitted into the country. And we also talked about the protection to intellectual property. And we can see that in some of the chapters in the free trade agreements that we've signed. And we also have the correct application of the norm. And so we have the legislative framework through all its regional directions. And lastly, we have all the information that has to be given all about the foreign trade in Chile, so all the exports and all the imports that we have, and all of these have to be traced systematically, and all this disaggregated information of the products that are coming in and out of the country. And now, how is customs conform? So today it has a staff of 2,350 employees who are distributed throughout the country. We have our headquarters in Valparaiso, and where we have the national director with the different sub-directions. And it also has 10 regional management officers, and each one is distributed throughout the country. And it has 6 customs administrations, and these depend on the regional directions. And these, we also have 42 border crossings and more than 82 enabled points, which can be on land or can be by air or maritime. And all these regional officers, management officers and customs administrations have to report to the national customs, which administers the regulations through the customs of all the goods that are coming in and out of Chile. And all these are the laws and regulations that rule the institutions. So we have the organic law of service, the FL number 328, 1978. This is from the Ministry of Finance, which determines how the service is constituted. So as we said, it was constituted with a national direction, then regional management officers, and then customs officers, then all the border crossings. All these constitute customs. And then we have the customs ordinance, the FLN 30 of 2004 of the Ministry of Finance, which is the norm and the base of everything that customs has to control in the entry and exit of merchandise in the country. Everything is normed under a legislative aspect which determines what authority customs has on the merchandise that is coming in and out of the country, and how it should come in and out of the country, and what aspects these must comply with. And then we have Resolution N1300, which is the compendium of custom rules. And so we'll see this in more detail further on. And as I said before, the customs ordinance, it has all the authority, the definitions, the primary zones. So where does customs have authority? It's in the entry and exit of merchandise from the country, and all the customs rights as well. And it determines where customs can actually act and exert its authority. And also all the controls on the border controls. And it also revises all the documents of the merchandise online. This is all online. So where we revise all the merchandise coming in out of the country using the documents. And after this, where we have revised all the documentation of something that's come into the country, that are being nationalized, that are coming in from overseas, and they're not nationalized until the tariffs are being paid, and then that merchandise is nationalized and it can come into the Chilean territory. And this is hand in hand with all the customs destinations. So it can be for export or import. And these come in and out of the country, and they conclude these customs destinations by paying the tariffs, determined tariffs. And within this customs ordinance, we also have the customs tariff, which is the Chilean system where we classify the merchandise that's coming into the country. Is this coming into the country? Is this going overseas? So we have to classify this merchandise, and also we have to see the preferences of tariffs for this country, because Chile, as the different speakers have said, has different agreements, different free trade agreements. And as you can see in this customs tariffs, according to the classification of each one of the products that want to come into the country, what tariff preferences do they have depending on the origin of the merchandise? As I said, here we have the compendium of customs regulations. So we have a chapter 1 to chapter 7, where we have the general rules that determine how do customs have to act, what roles do they comply with. So what role does the national director have, for example, and what the role do the administrators also have. So this is in the general rules. And then we have the customs valuation of goods. And this valuation, normally, these merchandise is already evaluated, and there are certain moments in which the merchandise doesn't arrive with its valuation, or there can be a discrepancy between the value of the merchandise that is coming into the country, and customs has the technical mechanisms, which we can see in chapter 2. So we have to see how we do all these technical calculations to be able to see how we evaluate those goods and what tariffs we apply on these. And then in chapter 3, we have the entry of goods into Chile. And this can be with a customs destiny, so it can be import, re-entry, it can be a temporal admission, it can be a temporary admission for an active improvement, or it can be a transport. And all this is typified in chapter 3 in the entry of goods, in chapter 4 in the exit of goods. So Chile to overseas, as we said, we need a destination for the merchandise to leave the country. So we are either exporting, re-exporting, a temporary exit, or a temporary exit for massive exports. So these exit of merchandise in Chile are in chapter 4. And then we have chapter 5 with the cancellation and modification or clarification of declarations. And this is related to when there is a declaration of an entry of merchandise or an exit of merchandise, and there can be an error there. So we would have to either annul the exit or the entry of the merchandise, and we would have to do the whole process again, or we would have to modify the declaration. In chapter, but this was chapter 5, and this is chapter 6 now, is the auction of goods. So any merchandise that comes into Chile has a destination, and it must be concluded. If it is not concluded for any reason, maybe the merchandise has been abandoned or the customs rights haven't been paid, so that merchandise has to be detained in customs for 90 days, and on the 91st day, by authorization of the Chilean state that merchandise will have 3 conditions. It will be destined to an auction, or it will be donated, or it will be destroyed. Therefore, merchandise will always have a conclusion. So if it doesn't get to some kind of destiny, which is entry or exit, it will have finally one of these 3 conditions to conclude. So it could be auctioned, donated, or destroyed. So in chapter 6, we can see how goods can be auctioned. And then we have chapter 7, which are goods or merchandise subject to special dispatch. And these have a very special destination, so it can be a temporary entry into Chile due to an emergency. For example, there's an energy emergency in the country, or maybe to help other countries that are having problems in their energy supply. Now, the role of Chilean customs, so it facilitates foreign trade in Chile and it protects our borders, as we said, especially from illegal traffic, and it determines tariffs, taxes, and other specific taxes. And also there's been a constant development of foreign trade in Chile, where mechanisms and technical instruments have been improved, and therefore this has been a work that we've developed for a long time to be able to adapt what needs to be determined for each one of the countries with which we have trade agreements, all these tariff preferences. And also there's a constant development to improve mechanisms and technical instruments which allow us to improve the service and facilitates our supervisory role, and also makes everything more agile, makes all the times of entry and exit a lot faster. And so what has customs done in relation to the growth of Chilean foreign trade in the last 20 years? And as we said, it's important to know that in Chile, there has been a development in its trade and opening up to other countries, and customs has also had to lead here in its facilitation role and supervisory role with all this movement that's been expanding in the last 20 years. And what's most important today is that more than 50% of all the documentation is in a digitalized form. So if before we had to see much paperwork, 50% of this is being done electronically. So in a very near future, we're hoping is that we're going to have that condition of the digitalization or electronic forms is going to be the norm. And we've also implemented new information technologies. We've invested a lot in this in our service. And what has this done? It's actually helped for all the documentation to be a lot more agile. And also the revision of this is online and it's much quicker. And also we've been able to standardize, especially in the regional management offices, we've been able to standardize all this digitalized form or way of seeing all the documents. And also we have a permanent training for the staff with all these new technologies and all these changes that have developed over time due to all this opening in these to the world in these free trade agreements. So they've had to train permanently in all the changes that we're having in this space. And also there's an improved communication with other customs and an active participation in the WCO meetings. So it's the WCO that tries to standardize customs and how all products are going into the different countries. So the communication with all the other customs in the world has been a lot more efficient, and hopefully in the near future we're going to have a direct communication in the sense that it can be in real time, because there's still problems with the entry and exit of goods in Chile, because we're in this part of the world where we're in at day, and other parts of the world are at night time. So that's made it a bit more difficult to have a direct communication, especially for the entry and exit of goods, to be able to have a more agile documentation of all the merchandise in our country. So the idea is to make this much more quicker. And now, as we're talking about the customs destinations of entry to Chile, so what's coming into Chile, and as the speakers also talked about the agreements that started with all the free trade agreements between Chile and the European Union, and which now we have an association agreement between the UK and Chile. We've maintained the same tariffs. So Chile has a tariff of 6% in general, but today with the preferential tariffs, this has gone down to less than 1%. And we also have, within this tariff, we have to consider also the VAT, which is 19%, which is the added value on the merchandise. And there's other specific taxes as well for some special merchandise like tobacco, for example. There's also other ways of entry to the country without paying rights. So we can have a temporal admission, for example, or a particular admission. And the temporal admission has some details that have to be looked into, because the merchandise can come into the country, but they don't have to pay the tariffs, or they can go to a private store warehouse. But we still haven't complete, and they can remain in a private warehouse for 90 days. And when those 90 days are up, and if nobody says that this merchandise belongs to them, to give them a new customs destinations or to pay the tariffs and nationalize these merchandise. So on day 91, it goes to the Chilean state. And as we said before, it can be auctioned or it can be destroyed. So the documents that can be, so the entry document, this DIN document is administered by the agents in customs, and this document can be processed electronically, and it's used for all the entry and exit of goods into the country. And so the electric forms are prepared, which can be a DIN, and these can be done, this admissions document can be electronically filled in. And now customs inspections, this is another of the roles that customs has, apart from everything that we've talked about. And we have here various, and within the operations, we also have to manage risks, and risks is given by anything that is illegal coming into the country, and also protection of intellectual property coming into Chile, and also any smuggling into the country. So we have to do this with risk matrices that give us an alert, a notification on any prohibited goods through the documentation. And after that, we revise all the documentation, and we also do a physical revision. So all this risk management is given to the revision before any merchandise comes into Chile. And when the merchandise has actually arrived into Chile, then we do the physical inspection. And then we have non-invasive technologies to be able to do that revision of the merchandise. Because if it's going to be physical and with so much merchandise coming into Chile and out of Chile, we have to revise them. And all these new technologies which are used now for revising the goods shouldn't damage them, of course, and shouldn't damage the human health. So the inspections plan for 2023 is to safeguard the rules that regulate Chilean foreign trade, protecting the country from illicit traffic of merchandise and from customs tax evasion through the systematic application of a risk management model. And this is given by the revision that's made before the merchandise comes into the country, and this is online, and then afterwards when it's actually in the country. And the participation of customs in the UK-Chile agreement, it's mainly to facilitate the entry and exit of merchandise. As I said, customs is trained and has developed a system, public-private system, for the entry and exit of merchandise in Chile, so it can be as agile as possible, and it has the capacity. And also it's guaranteed that everything is regulated. And so there's been a lot of barriers to trade. So, for example, we can have problems with the documentation system, or with the amount of merchandise that will come into the country. So over the years, Chile has acquired a lot of competence, a lot of skills in all these system, and it's also reduced costs. We're still developing many things to be able to improve our service, and we already have a growing trade with the UK, which we hope it's going to improve and increment, and we would like to agilize the system, make it more agile and facilitate the system, and for everyone to know what is the regulatory framework, and that it can also be applied for any preference in tariffs. And also we apply special tariff and administrative benefits, so everything that corresponds to the association agreements between the UK and Chile. And also the idea is to be able to apply all the benefits on tariffs and administrative benefits, and all this is regulated in customs, and all the different directions that are involved and authorities that are involved know about these different tariffs. So the idea is that someone can send a product to Chile, and that can come into Chile through any customs, any place in Chile, and they will have the same standards and the same norms and regulations will be applied throughout the country. We also have the revision of certificates of origin, and this determines the origin of the different goods. So we're also regulated, and we have a special chapter on this in the agreement that we have with the UK. So we have to know which merchandise has a certificate of origin, and therefore can actually have any, can apply to tariff and administrative benefits. And also we have the application of special regimes, and in Chile we have duty-free zones in the north of Chile and in the south of Chile, where the treatment, customs treatment of any merchandise is completely different to the rest of the customs in Chile, because in those points, the merchandise can come into the country, because if it arrives to this destiny and it doesn't, and it's not transported to the rest of the country and it stays there, then it can be duty-free. And yet, if these want to be transported to the rest of the national territory, then they just have to complete the cycle of payment of the tax and the VAT. And then we have the temporary admission, which is the temporary admission of certain merchandise to Chile, where they can, the idea is that they don't lose their quality of being foreign trade. Maybe they can be re-exported. And this temporary admission, as we said, or these customs destinations have an objective, and the idea is to make the entry or the exit more agile in Chile and to determine the flows that are being developed, because Chile has a lot of free trade agreements with different countries. So other countries have used this platform of bringing merchandise into Chile and then redirecting them to other countries. So they nationalize the merchandise in Chile and then they send it on to other countries to benefit from the agreements that Chile has with other nearby countries such as Peru, Paraguay, Uruguay, and others. And so just like to thank you again, and special thanks to the embassy and to the other speakers, and to tell you that all the norms and regulations are in customs. So you can go into www.aduana.cl and you can see all the ordinances, all the compendiums, and you can see how you can enter or exit any merchandise into the country and what status, what they have to be in, and how can we complete the whole process so we have all the whole regulatory framework, and to know what authority customs has, and to know what activities can be carried out by any exporter or importer. And we've given safety and security in customs, and also in all this joint work, as you said, we've carried out to give safety to all international trade, and we work jointly with other services, and customs works hand in hand with the SAG, and especially in everything that needs to be certified and everything that needs to be revised, especially in the entry or exit of merchandise. And the idea is that this is made in a timely and agile manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comprehensive presentation on customs procedures in Chile. And now we will have a presentation from Mr. Eduardo Santos. He's the former head of International Department at the Ministry of Agriculture in Chile. He's also a former agricultural attaché of Chile in Washington, D.C. He holds a PhD from the University of Sussex. He's an international trade consultant. He will be providing an analysis of the Chilean agri-food market with focus on export opportunities in the food and beverage sector. So, Eduardo, please, te escuchamos.
¿Se ve la presentación, Sacha?
Aún no.
¿Ahí?
Sí, perfecto. Ahí ya está cargando.
Ya.
Ya está bien todo. Gracias, Eduardo.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning to the British audience. Although I am supposed to speak English after so many years living in the UK and the US, I will hope that the interpreters would make a better job So I will go back to Spanish now. My apologies to the British audience for that. And I hope this audience also include people from Wales, my home for many, many, many years.
This presentation that is coming almost at the end of this meeting of today has the advantage of having been able to listen to great presenters and great speakers. There's a lot of useful information, but at the same time, there is also the disadvantage that a great part of the work that I had carried out was already done previously. But I do hope to not repeat too much of what has already been said. I basically have organized this brief presentation in 5 big titles. The first one corresponds to a brief description, and forgive me, before I continue with this, I would like to thank especially the embassy, the British embassy, Mr. Kennedy and Sacha Garafulich, for this invitation. I apologize once again and I continue. As I was saying previously, the big, large titles. The first one corresponds to a brief description of the commercial interaction that exists between the Great Britain and Chile the last few years. Second, a brief description of the exports that the experts call the drivers of this commercial interaction, and what should be pushing or driving this agro-food market here in Chile to continue growing, and what are the main trends and modifications that we could expect in the future. And hopefully this will allow exporters and investors of Great Britain to be able to decide how to come to the Chilean market. In third place, I would like to have a quick look at the market opportunities that I believe today exist in this market in Chile, with illustrations that are very concrete. Many of them were already mentioned previously, illustrations that are concrete, specific products in which the British exporters could and should focus on. And to be able to conclude briefly with, we will have a challenges and opportunities section in the market. And I think that there are great opportunities for exports from food products, but that are also including challenges. This is basically what I would like to cover today. So this gives us a quick view of what, I'm sorry, I would like to clarify something. In case the numbers do not coincide, or the numbers that you see are not corresponding or do not coincide exactly with what you are accustomed to seeing, this is information that I have received from the database of the United Nations. ITC in the UN. So going back to this slide, Chile is pretty low in the list of the markets of Great Britain, given the information of exportation from the last 5 years. In difference, in the case of Chile, the United Kingdom is in the place number 19. It is not within the first. However, it is much higher than where Chile is on the market in exports from Great Britain. I think you can look at this in two different ways. On one hand, as you can see further, we will see further on, it offers great opportunities because there is still a lot of work looking forward and there are great things that can be carried out. But at the same time, it gives the impression that there is at least limited knowledge of the Chilean market, which could be a great challenge. But however, this is a general view, a bird's eye view of the relationship of exports of both countries. To go a little bit more into detail, if we zoom in to this relationship, we can see that the commerce or trade is pretty balanced. In the last 5 years, the exports from Chile over Great Britain are slightly superior to the exports to the $724 million exported by Great Britain to Chile. The great difference is given in the fact of the content of these exports. More than 2/3 of these exports from Chile to Great Britain are agri-food products. However, only a small part, only 12%, are in the case of British exports to Chile, are in the agri-food products, whether it be forest, food, livestock, agriculture. So the big question that I like to answer in this presentation and in possible queries and questions we may have at the end of this seminar is if we can or cannot improve these $85 million that is being exported by Great Britain to Chile. And the answer that I can anticipate, at least from my point of view, is, as President Obama used to say, yes, we can. Opportunities are in the market, in the Chilean food market, and I hope to be able to show in the next few slides what opportunities exist and what we should do. So what are the elements that today are driving the transformation and the changes and that are moving the agro-food market in Chile? I think that on the base of a commercial system that is productive that we have now in Chile, which has successfully been developing over the last few decades, there are 3 elements that today are marking the development of the agro-food industry in Chile and that probably will maintain for some time, at least in the short and mid term, and that interact amongst themselves. It's not only a sum, they are modifying in the process. First of all, we have the policy, the food security national policy from the government of President Boric, which has elements that incentivate and push the production and basic foods, whether it be domestic, but that will also have an impact in imports and commercial relationships that we can have with those countries that we exchange products with. Second, and this is very important, the changes that have started happening in the patterns of consumption due to the patterns in income in the population of Chile. And here there is a change that I think is tremendously important, and that is highlighted somehow by the third element, which is the impact of COVID. Some of them also mentioned war and other things. I will come back to that. But the change, I think, one of the changes that is one of the most important ones in the patterns of consumption in Chile comes from the population getting older. They say that the population pyramid in Chile is no longer a pyramid, it's almost a square, a rectangle even. And that demands consumption of different kinds of foods. It promotes the development of food services, and it promotes the consumption and trade of new foods. This has been modified, changed, and highlighted, especially in those things having to do with distribution systems and commercial logistics systems, trade logistics through the pandemic and the war, and also by the invasion of the Russia to Ukraine. And this all gives new opportunities. It has brought the consumption of new foods in Chile, including those that are prepared meals. Today, the consumption, sales, and distribution of prepared food is tremendous. Those who live in Chile literally see thousands and thousands of people on motorcycles, bicycles, distributing food in the big cities, especially in the metropolitan region of Santiago. This has definitely modified the kind of food that is consumed, the way it's consumed, and the way this food is distributed. All of this is changing in a substantial way. The food market opens important opportunities for food exporters that want to come to Chile. A quick view regarding agricultural and food trade in Chile. I will not go too far. I won't go very long on export because that's very well known. There are 5-6 groups of products that are predominant, especially fruits, seafood, beverages, especially wine and meats. And we other have, whether it be poultry or pork. On the other hand, we have in the import side, they are very clearly identified, and there are 4 or 5 groups that dominate imports of Chile, which are meats, cereals, residues, and preparations based on residues of the food industry, many of those go to food, animal food preparation. And we also have the import of beverages that includes, of course, whiskey from Great Britain. But there are other elements that we will see looking forward also that has importance, that is growing due to the changes that are being generated in the Chilean market and also in the new demands that have been appearing. And they have to do, for example, import of live animal and genetics, dairy products, and food preparations. So in this graph, basically, I compare something that is pretty obvious and that you can see on the left of the screen, at least for me, you can see the main products that are imported by Chile. And as I mentioned previously, it includes meat, dairy products, cereal, oil, preparations of fruit and others, beverages and spirits, preparation from legumes, animal feed, gourmet. Exports in this big graph here on the right of my screen, the exports of Great Britain have a great correspondence with what could be the import Great Britain exports practically everything that we need or are importing in food products at this time. The great question is, the one that we should try to analyze and understand and see what is happening is, are we competitive in a market that today is very captivated by a small group of exporters and importing companies? That is what we need to see. But Great Britain produces and exports what we today are importing in food products. So here, let's take a quick look at these food products and agricultural products. I have marked in green those things that are the most obvious, having to do with possibilities of export from Great Britain. And in yellow, those things that has great potential, but that apparently not everybody sees, or it is not so obvious that that is an opportunity. So this corresponds to what we were talking about previously, and somehow you can see this with the level of export of Great Britain. Great Britain exports live animals, and we need, and in this section of HSO1, there are live animals and genetics. And the import of genetics is something that has been mentioned many times in different occasions today. Chile imports genetics, and there is a great market that exports for Great Britain, Britain, especially having to do with genetics of poultry, sheep, and especially in that area. And other products, here we have the imports in Chile, and on the other side we also have sheep and goat. And you can see meat, dairy products, edible vegetables, as I was saying. And in this group, I think the most interesting because it's a product that Chile imports in the HS07 is the legumes. And another product that Chile imports are the cereals, and Great Britain also is a great exporter of cereals. And finally, on this slide I am showing now, there are obvious products, once again, like for example, beverages and spirits, and the residues and waste from food industries. But there are many products that are marked in these groups, marked in yellow, in which Great Britain would also be a great exporter, and Chile imports products of these kind. Like for example, fruit preparations of vegetables and fruit in HS20, and also the cocoa and chocolate. Great Britain has a great industry, a super industry having to do in chocolate preparations, and Chile imports a lot of chocolate. And in the next few slides, I am going to go into detail with some examples. There are 4 or 5 examples to be able to show what Chile is importing, what Great Britain exports, and what is the competition in which Great Britain should face. So having to do with meats, especially bovine animals, Chile imports more than 1 billion a year with bovine animals, fresh or chilled. And Great Britain practically does not show up in this one, or the numbers are very insignificant. I'm talking about this 2017 to 2021. If any new containers have come in since then, those have not been considered. But the numbers obtained from the database of the United Nations that includes those reported by Chile as imports and those exported by Great Britain practically does not have any great export in from Great Britain. They could do it. We would need to see what the condition is in sanitary and what are the requirements that the agricultural and livestock services has for Great Britain. But in this product, Great Britain should compete with Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and the United States. If USA can do it, why not Great Britain? That is the big question. I think they can. And in dairy products, I concentrated on those things having to do with cheese and curd, where Great Britain exports some to Chile. Great Britain is a great producer, including cheeses with unpronounceable names that are exported around the world. Why are we not exporting to Chile? The opportunities exist. Chile imports more than $200 million a year average of cheese from Argentina, United States of America, Germany, New Zealand, Netherlands. Why not Great Britain? Yes, I think that we can. Great Britain has great cheese with denomination of origin, cheese that are produced only and exclusively in Great Britain, and the market here could purchase it. Other products correspond to preparations of vegetables and fruit. one of the big memories that I have of Great Britain are the great jams, the candy that is not exported to Chile. And today we are importing. I consume many times different jams or other things imported from France. Great Britain has the market here. We can compete with Spain. We can compete with France. And we need to see, but that is the competition that today Great Britain is going to face in Chile in these products. The market is here, present. And the same thing happens with other preparations having to do with other vegetables. You have different products that we arrive from China, processed vegetables from China. It's Great Britain should not have to face big competition nor difficulty having to do with logistics to export this kind of product. And here, having to do with beverages and spirits. Today, 55% of the products exported by Great Britain to Chile in the area of agricultural and food products has to do with beverages and spirits. But there is a market that in Chile grows, and grows, and Great Britain practically is not touching it, which has to do with beers. And in Great Britain, there are great beer producers that are artisans and they are first level. And as you can see here on this graph, there is imports from Europe, Belgium, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, and there's a little bit from the UK. But this is a market that is totally within the range of the producers and exporters of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom. And I think this is my last slide that has comparisons having to do with imports and exports from Great Britain. And the one that has to do with exports of industrial, food industry residues and preparations of food for animals and pets. And this has been mentioned in different occasions. And today, pets are so abundant. A little bit less than the population in Chile, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years it can increase the number of the Chilean population. And as Horacio Borges mentioned previously, this is a market that is very large and it is more and more sophisticated. And Great Britain is not considering or has not penetrated or has not worked in a detailed way except for a little bit of exports for animal consumption, but not in the pet market. And lastly, and now trying to conclude, I think that at least for me, with the information that is reviewed up till this moment, I think the great opportunities for producers and exporters from Great Britain of having to do with food, it has to do with the commodity market. Especially, I don't know if it's adequate to call dairy commodities, but I included it here. We have great opportunities in the commodity markets that I have identified meats, dairy, legumes, cereals, and oils. This because the production from Chile clearly is not increasing in these sectors, but consumption is increasing and we need more imports in this kind of products. But also, due to the change in the food consumption, having to do with the change of the entry of possibilities of having access to new food, due to the aging of the population, to the entry of the women to the world market, and less time for food preparation, the homes are a new market that has appeared in the area of prepared foods and gourmet foods and the consumption of drinks. And as I mentioned, in previous slides, in the case of beverages, let's not forget mineral water as well. I didn't mention mineral water, but the mineral waters or filtered water in Chile, the consumption has increased enormously, and today we are importing water from other countries. I see two challenges that are very important. That we need to be able to pass, be able to be successful in the Chilean market. One of them is the great exporters established in Chile for decades. For example, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay. And after the free trade agreements, Canada and the United States, could Great Britain also compete with them? I think they could. But we need to try, we need to look for it, we need to do it intentional. And the second challenge is, in my opinion, highly centralized distribution and hierarchy system of distribution and sales of food products that does not make it easy. It does not facilitate the entry of new exporters. And a good example of this is what happens, and I suppose it can be mentioned here, is the entry of a great commercial chain from the United States with the purchase of one of the big distribution centers of the supermarkets of Líder in Chile. They are companies that have their acquisition systems purchases that are very centralized, very specialized, that we need to know and that we need to be in condition of being able to penetrate. But the most important is that it can be done. I personally, in my professional work, I have done so. It is not easy, but it is possible. What is critical here is to be able to guarantee the supply chain in mid and long term with products that are good quality. Without that guarantee, there will be no distribution and sale of products in Chile that will stop buying from United States or Canada to buy products from Great Britain unless we can guarantee good quality and continuity. So what should we do in the future? What's next? We need to get out so that Great Britain can know what they can do. And Great Britain has great products to offer and sell in Chile. So here the embassy, SACHA, and all of the different organisms and institutions that work in this are going to have to organize commercial missions, visits to Chile, participation in different fairs. And here there is a question, and I'm not sure if it has been carried out as of now or not, but to be able to show identity of the British food. There are countries from Europe. I know that what entities they are here, because you can just get on internet and you can find wonderful pages with products having to do with in the dairy area or meats or genetics. But I have in mind what Spain has that is called the despensa, which is like the pantry, and you can find hundreds or maybe even thousands of products with brands that have already been established globally. And that is what we need to do with the British products here in Chile. We need to bring them. We need to come. The embassy needs to commit, etc. But the opportunities are available. The market is available, and challenges are completely, they can be resolved. So to conclude, looking on internet just these last few days, Amazon sells British scones over internet to Chile. And Falabella, one of the commercial stores, they sell what they call esconcitos in the department stores, Falabella. And I suppose in English, it's a little scone. So there we already have products. We can bring them. We can promote them. We can promote these opportunities exist, but we need to do our part. So thank you very much, all of you. I am available for any questions, etc. And I would like to thank the embassy once again. I would like to thank Sasha and all of those who have organized this seminar.
Eduardo, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por excelente presentación. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a detailed presentation on all the specific aspects of the bilateral trade, the opportunities it has in several products such as cheese, pet foods, animal genetics as well, sheep genetics, bovine genetics, porcine genetics, as you mentioned as well. I would like to mention that today among our attendees, we have representatives from ASOGAMA, Asociación de Ganaderos de Magallanes, Breeders Association from Magallanes. We also have representatives from UK-TAG, Technology and Agriculture and Genetics, and UK-ECP, which is the United Kingdom Export Certification Program. So thank you. Thank you once again. And now on our program, we have our next speaker, Mr. Juan Carlos Dominguez. He's the Executive President of the Chilean Meat Association. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us in person to the webinar, but however, he has kindly sent us his presentation in video on the Chilean meat industry, which, by the way, highlights a visit by UK exporters to Chile in September this year. So now we will reproduce the video. If any audio issues, you can also listen through the interpreters channels. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks to the British Embassy in Chile for inviting me to this seminar. I can't start my presentation without saying that I felt not being in Chile when the delegation of the Agricultural and Horticultural Development Board visited our industry last September. I am convinced that this type of trips are very useful for both countries and allow us to keep improving. Let's start now, and let's start talking a little bit about the meat market in Chile. As you can see in the first chart, pork and poultry meat represent together 86% of the total meat production in Chile. Chile is a world-class food supplier. If we look at the figures, fruit is currently the leading food exporting sector in Chile. followed by salmon, wine, and in fourth place, meat. In terms of trade, Chile will export this 2022 $1,600 million in meat, and pork and poultry represent 85% of this total exported. The 68% of the pork produced in the country, it will be exported this 2022, 32% of chicken, and 40% of the total turkey production. The main export market for pork is Asia, with China, South Korea, and Japan being the most important. In the case of poultry, the main markets are the United States, Mexico, and also China. We like to say that our industry was born to export. 25 years ago, the industry decided that its successful will be based on developing a product of the highest quality that could be traded in the world's most demanding market. Today, we are enabled to export to more than 60 markets. Let's talk now about our assets as a meat industry. In the last 20 years, our industry has grown and will continue to grow based on three pillars: health and safety, biosecurity, and sustainability. Let's begin with food security and our effort to guarantee that consumers have access to our product at any time and to make sure they are healthy, safe, and nutritious. Chilean pork and poultry industry is a world-class and produced under a unique model which integrates all processes from feed plant to sales, offering 100% of traceability and control of the entire production chain. Since its beginning, this industry has operated under high standards of health and food safety, which during the pandemic were vital to care for and keep employees safe while continuing normal operation. During the pandemic, we never stopped. Now let's talk about biosecurity. Chile has a great advantage. We are an island of biosecurity with natural barriers that protect us from disease. The Atacama Desert to the north, Patagonia and its ancient ice to the south, the Pacific Ocean to the east, and the Andes Mountains to the west. But these natural conditions are not enough. Biosecurity is a key pillar of our work alongside the Chilean Agricultural and Livestock Health Authority, SAG. We have implemented all the necessary measures to protect Chile's health assets and prevent any disease that may affect our animals from entering the country. We have improved our health surveillance plan by strengthening practices monitoring, the self-reporting system via training, and the diagnostic capacity of the SAG laboratory. We implement BioRep, a program that reduces the risk of entry of disease via animal feed and supplies. Today, thanks to BioRep, 100% of risk inputs coming from ASF-positive countries must comply with a 60 to 90 days waiting period before being used. For example, to control the borders, one of the main risk factors for disease entry, we donate dogs to the Santiago International Airport that are trained to detect and prevent the entry of animal-based products. We also launched a strong awareness campaign for both travelers and border control personnel. We are making all the necessary effort not just to prevent the entry of SF or other diseases, but also to implement the required control measure if it does enter the country. And last but not least, let's talk about sustainability. The industry builds its growth on sustainability and the concept of circular economy, and has invested in the acquisition and adaptation of the state-of-the-art technologies to keep growing its production without affecting natural resources. Let me show you some examples from different companies of our industry. AgroSuper produce biofertilizer for the use in their own farms and also to donate for use of small farmers. ASA, another company, produce biogas used for electricity, heat, and steam. Another example is Maxagua Slaughter Plant, it's run completely on renewable energy. A final example is Coexter. They irrigate 150 hectares of pine tree with biofertilizer, returning water to the area from which it was extracted. Talking about use of water, last year the industry was working on calculating how much water was being used in meat production, and the result looks very good. The Chilean pig sector, for example, used a total of 12.4 million cubic meters per year. However, only 38% of the volume is actually used in the production processes. The remaining 61% is purified and reused as fertigation or as washing water in barns. The Chilean pork and poultry sector is part of the Chile Conscious Origin Program, a sustainability standard that offers producers international certification whose metrics and indicators are aligned with the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. In conclusion, our meat industry is creating future, and we work hard every day to put product on your table that meets your requirements, following high standard of health, safety, and biosecurity, while focusing on sustainable development and caring for the environment. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, so we thank Juan Carlos Dominguez for having sent us this video on the Chilean meat industry and the interaction they've had with the UK exporters. We have now reached the Q&A session. We have a few questions that were delivered through the chat. I will be reading them in the language that we got it, so I don't translate it and don't interfere with the interpreters. So the first one is in Spanish. I believe should be for Mr. Emilio Araya for Customs. It mentions, ¿cuál es el plazo máximo para poder pagar los impuestos y poder retirar los productos de aduana?
Perdón, ¿me escucha?
Perfecto.
Can you hear me? So what was the question? Sorry. So what is the maximum time to pay all the VAT or the taxes? Well, you can have special regime, but usually it's 90 days. It's 90 days. Any person has 90 days that has any merchandise in customs to pay all the taxes on the day 91, as I said before. Now they belong to the Chilean state, and they will be auctions or they will be destroyed. So you have 90 days. Unless those days can be extended by the national director, but it's usually 90 days to pay your taxes. Okay, thank you very much. And another question now in relation to everything that's been exposed and talked about. And I think it must be a question for Carlos Furche, but I think that Eduardo and Horacio can also reply. So the thing is, what possibilities is there to be able to extend bilateral trade, to be able to include new products in technological inputs to improve agriculture, make it more efficient and more sustainable? Well, okay, so I'd just like to say, I'd just simply like to say the following. After hearing everything that Eduardo was talking about, I think that effectively in the bilateral commerce, looking from the UK towards Chile, I think that we have to search for alternatives that allow us to be able to get products, high value, high added value products, together with products that are for niche markets and products that contribute to improve sustainability and productivity in agriculture and livestock in Chile with technological innovation. Chile is located in the extreme south of South America, and particularly in these countries of Mercosur, and these are 25% of the world commodities, agricultural commodities. So if you can imagine that Great Britain could be really competitive next to Brazil and Argentina or Uruguay for products such as wheat or even bovine meat. It's very complex to think. I mean, you can have the possibility, but I think the focus when you're seeking for new opportunities should be towards high added value products, niche markets, and technological innovation. Perfect. Thank you very much. I don't know if any other panelists would like to refer to this or answer this question. Yes, Sasha, just very briefly, I'd like to say I totally agree with what Carlos Furcha said, in the sense that the commodities market today is very competitive. It's not easy to penetrate it. And I would say that there's huge opportunities, as Carlos said, in certain areas and certain niche markets. For example, genetics. That is something that is really important, in that we need to we import a lot of this, and I personally have been involved in various occasions. So when I worked as a agricultural aggregator in Washington, and then in the private sector, and I know that there are a lot of opportunities in genetics, and I think the opportunities are in the niche markets, and as Carlos added as well, in products that have an added value. The opportunities are there. We have to look for them. Some are very obvious and others are a little bit more occult, but the opportunities are there. Okay, thank you very much, Eduardo. So we can see you now. And I see there's another question that's directed to you, Eduardo. But first of all, Horacio, I think you also want to answer. Yes, no, just like to ratify what Carlos said. It's not easy to compete with all the countries, especially in bovine meat, and Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, that are our great associates. And yes, I do think that related to food for pets, despite the fact that all the raw material actually comes from these countries that I've just mentioned in general, but there is a huge opportunity there. And when you start looking more into this, because I am a veterinary, so I should know about this, and I'm looking for I'm always watching the market and seeing how sophisticated all the treatments and the food for pets is. Impressive today. And I think the UK must be much ahead of us in this. And because we're just starting to consider pets as part of the family today. So the UK is far ahead on this. Well, thank you. Thank you, Horacio. Thank you very much. We have another question for Eduardo. I understand fundamentally from the last part of his presentation where he said that the UK and the food industry, does the UK and the food industry have any brand that identifies it here, or that allows it to differentiate from the rest or distinguish from the rest of the European market? For example, in Chile, we had foods from Chile, for example, with which we promote our products. So we've got Chile pork, Chile wines. So Eduardo, Santos, and also any other speaker who would like to detail on this. Well, very briefly, Sacha. So I'm just going to go into this very briefly. So given that Carlos had already said it and Horacio had reiterated this, and I also mentioned it, the best opportunities for food exports from the UK to Chile is in niche markets, market niche, sorry. I think it's critical that all the consumers and the importers, which is a group of people, they're quite complicated actually, it's quite a complicated group. Oh, these are the buyers, the purchasers of these distribution chains. They're not easy to access. So that's very critical that Great Britain, all the British producers should have their own proper identity, which allows them to identify themselves, and that people can distinguish their products from the rest and distinguish them from the rest of the European exporters. And that's my intervention. Thank you very much, Eduardo. Oh, sorry. And if nobody else wants to say anything else, I think that's the reason why it's so critical when I was saying in my presentation at the end, is that we should have presence of British exporters in Chile and also of their products in Chile. There's many different ways of doing this, but it would be very useful to have their presence here in Chile, and very soon. Perfect, Eduardo, thank you so much. And the last question here is from an exporter from...
The challenges that small and medium companies have to overcome when exporting is not only financial barriers, but also red tape, meaning bureaucratic procedures or excessive bureaucratic procedures. So what does the UK-Chile Association Agreement have in place to make exporting smoother and allowing for faster commercial agreements within or with local Chilean companies? Si alguno de los panelistas, director, por favor.
If any of the speakers would like to answer. Yes, thank you very much, Sasha, and thank you to all the speakers for their excellent presentation. It's been a pleasure to hear each one of you. And with respect to this question, as I said at the beginning, in the welcoming words, this agreement, this association agreement with the UK, was based mainly on the agreements that we had with the European Union. So it does contain the agreement in matters related to customs and related matters. So there's a lot of red tape there, of course, and this establishes a framework, a cooperation framework between both countries and the agencies and customs as well. And this is precisely something that we are considering in the modernization process. So we have to facilitate commerce, we understand that, and we have to collect all the special concrete problems that our importers and exporters have in the exporting and importing process, and be able to assist them day to day, because together with ProChile, we are working daily on this. It's not just negotiating bilateral agreements that always appear on the newspapers, but our daily work is how to implement these commercial agreements and generate cooperation instances so that we can work better. So I thank the British Embassy a huge amount, because they've been helping us, and also we're incorporating new work areas such as service to traders, which is really important to accelerate all the different flows, commercial flows, and in a different manner as well, trying to destroy all those red tapes that are in place. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Sacha. Thank you very much, Director. And Eduardo, yes, please. I'd just like to go back a little bit to what I was talking about before. And this is related to, in part, with my experience in the last 2 years working with exports from the United States, from the States and the US, and also from Chile, Colombia, Peru, and my experience from when I was in the embassy in Washington in the last decade. And I think that the contacts that you have with all the gremial associations, with the importers, exporters, the good relationship with all the local trade association is absolutely vital to be able to eliminate all this issue on the red tape. So to have relationship with the different guilds. And my experience in the US in exports and imports to and from Chile and the United States, the guilds and the importer distribution chains and the availability that all these commercial groups have to be able to work with the exporting countries is vital, because if there's a good relationship, there shouldn't be any red tape. There shouldn't be any barriers, particularly in the case of Chile, in which the customs service and the SAG, the Agriculture and Livestock Service, are vital in this process. And here, I would like to make a special hello to the Agricultural and Livestock Service, because they really do very important work, and it's not always acknowledged. So the good relationship with the different guilds, with the different importers, facilitates enormously the work that all the different services have to carry out, customs and the SAG. So it's vital, that contact group, that network that you have to have, so it can move and it can function, as they say in English. They move softly, smoothly, and with no pain. If you have a good relationship, there's no red tape. And I guarantee you that.
Muchas gracias,
Okay,
Eduardo.
so thank you very
Muchísimas
much,
gracias
Eduardo.
al resto de los
And
panelistas.
thank you very
Emilio,
much
sí.
to the other speakers. And Emilia is going to speak now. And I'd just like to say, as Sebastian said, there are still some things that we're still modernizing, we're still regulating. But as a service, as I was explaining to you, oftentimes the idea of, and as Eduardo said as well, the idea of daring to do things. And this is why we're doing this seminar, because the idea is to give you all the tools to the exporters, to the importers, so that you can have the ease to find the information, first of all, in all these different institutions, and that you can be sure that we're all working together. Because when we sit down on a table, on a negotiating table, all these actors are actually working towards improving international trade. So many groups see this as very distant, but it isn't, because we've been developing new instances and services alongside other agencies to improve documentation, to not have so much red tape. And actually we've been improving year by year, and we have a lot of advantage on other countries for the access and the entry and exit points in this country. Thank you very much, Emilio, for your contribution. And I thank you again to all the speakers that were here today with us, especially for the Sebastián Gómez, the Director General, and now we've reached the conclusions.
It's Tracy Barker-Street. She's the Country Director for the Department for International Trade, DIT, at the British Embassy in Chile, so she will be providing closing remarks for our webinar. Tracy, please.
Thank you, Sasha, and thank you to everyone for having me today. It's been a really interesting conversation. I hope it was all super useful for me. You've learned lots about the exciting opportunities there are for our trade. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the specific examples that we've been working on. And it's great to hear the export health certificates have been mentioned several times, I think, during the course of the session. And just to kind of emphasize the importance of that, since the Trade Continuity Agreement came into force in 2021, we've been working to agree new export health certificates for exports of agricultural products from the UK to Chile, and we've successfully achieved 21 approved to date. And we're working hard to increase that even further. I want to say a big thank you to our close friends and colleagues in SPRAE and in SAG for their help and partnership in this endeavour. Now, as we've heard, this creates a really important opportunity, and it opens up a total import market that is worth approximately £1.4 billion. So I guess I can't overemphasize how important that potential opportunity is. I said I'd like to focus on a few examples, and we've actually heard about some of them already today. We saw some photos as well from the excellent work, excellent mission we had recently, UK Pork Mission, who had came to Chile to attend the Espacio Food and Service Show, which is the most important food and drink trade fair in Chile. And at the same time, visiting supermarkets, visiting AgroSuper, as well, key stakeholders, business associations, importers and distributors. So I guess building on the theme Eduardo mentioned earlier of participation in trade fairs, we have a really good example on that. Now, this was linked to the opening of the pork market for the UK industry for the first time. 28 registered UK establishments can now export pork meat to Chile, and we're seeing the first shipments already having arrived here. That's estimated to be worth £20 million for the first 5 years of trade. So it's a really significant market opening, and we hope it will help the UK to expand on up to £339 million worth of pork that's already exported to the world last year, making sure that Chile is right up there as one of those key destinations. And I want to thank our partners, not just here in Chile, but also DEFRA and the UK Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, who we've been working closely with to support that entrance into the market. It's not just pork though, milk and dairy products. We've also had an approval for an EHC there, meaning that several UK supermarket establishments who wish to export dairy products to Chile, so that would be British cheeses, clotted cream, organic yogurt, they're authorised by the Chilean authorities. Thanks again to SAG for that. I'm sure there is a huge market for our excellent British cheese here in Chile. We've heard it mentioned earlier as well, I think, ovine genetic materials. So there is huge potential for exporters of ovine genetics here. The UK is one of the only countries in Europe authorised to export those goods to Chile. So it's a real competitive advantage. We've been working here in the embassy with breeders in the Southern Magallanes and Patagonia region, together with Chilean authorities, again, UK-TAG, who I think are here today, again, very appreciative of their support there, working together to explore new opportunities for British genetics, focusing on sheep production, but not just limited to that. And we have been working with our regional colleagues in the Department for International Trade to help support a recent visit to the UK a few months ago. So a really important kind of subsector for us, and lots of opportunity for the UK and Chile together to innovate and increase sustainability and innovation in this sector. Other great opportunities in the Chilean market for UK companies include on exporting pet foods. This includes supplements and chews after the approval of an EHC and the reduction of approval time for UK pet foods. This even includes a specific vegan pet food EHC, which has been agreed with Chile. We're not stopping there though. We're really keen to expand our exports to Chile on equine and bovine genetics, apples, processed meats, subproducts, ready-made meals, other products. I was very pleased to hear kind words from our speakers about the quality of UK products, and obviously we would be the first to say that there is hopefully a real benefit to the Chilean market to be able to access these great quality products, not just for the UK exporters to be able to send it. And I was particularly pleased to hear the recognition of the UK's artisanal beer market and offer. So it would be great to see even more excellent products making it here. I guess I want to finish by saying I hope you've seen how important agribusiness and the agri sector is for both the UK and Chile. Thanking again our Chilean partners and also our partners in the UK for helping us promote and support this important sector of our work. There's a huge amount of support available, and I think it was mentioned earlier, but I want to flag again and really encourage those interested in finding out more about business in Chile to look at the appropriately named Doing Business in Chile guide. The embassy and my team, and Sasha in particular here, have developed in partnership with the British Chilean Chamber of Commerce here in Santiago, who we will work closely with. The guide provides super detailed information on the opportunities and the routes into the Chilean market. And it also includes several sector reports, including agribusiness. So it's a really helpful kind of one-stop shop with lots of useful information. It's hosted on the British Chamber website, so please take a look out for it. It's a really useful and easy to navigate resource. And it's obviously not just there, so please do get in touch with us in the embassy here if you're interested in more support. We have lots of expertise and we are looking forward to continuing to support you. I hope that the information you've had today from our experts on the agreement in particular has been really useful for you to think about how you can develop new business opportunities in the sector and how the UK and Chile can continue to build on our super strong partnership and the super strong framework that things like the association agreement provide to develop our opportunities across the countries. So many thanks for joining, and thank you for giving me the honour, Sasha, of closing this important event today. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tracy. So the webinar now comes to an end. We thank once again everyone for attending, all the trade experts, the panelists, all the attendees from the UK. Also, we thank once again Director General from the Trade Ministry, Subrey, Sebastián Gómez, for supporting us, together with his expert from Subrey, Fernando Catalan. And we hope that the information provided proves useful and encourages everyone to look for opportunities and develop business between the UK and Chile. So thank you very much, and we wish you happy holidays as well. Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias, que estén bien.
Thank you very much all. Bye.